King Ahasuerus was now the ruler of the Persian Empire, where God's people dwelt. He held a great feast in the city of Susa, where he showed off all his greatness. On the seventh day, he wanted to show off Vashti the queen, but she refused to come. As a punishment, Vashti would never again be allowed to come before the king, and a new queen would be chosen. All the most beautiful young women in the empire were gathered together in Susa. Among them was Esther, a Jewish woman whose father and mother had died. She had been looked after by her cousin Mordecai. Esther did not tell anyone that she was a Jew. When Esther was taken before the king, he loved her more than all the other women he had seen, so he put a crown on her head and made her the queen instead of Vashti. Mordecai used to sit by the king's gate, and one day he heard that two men were plotting to attack King Ahasuerus. Mordecai told Esther, and Esther told the king. The two men were hanged, and all this was written down in the records. Later, King Ahasuerus made a man called Haman chief over all his officials, and all the king's servants had to bow down to him at the gate. But Mordecai did not bow down. When the servants asked him why he didn't, he told them that he was a Jew. When Haman found out about this, he was furious and wanted to kill not just Mordecai, but all the Jewish people throughout the empire. Haman said to the king, "There is a certain people in your kingdom that do not keep the king's laws. They should be destroyed, and I will put 10,000 talents of silver into the king's treasury." The king agreed, and letters were sent out with instructions to kill all the Jews, young and old, women and children, on a certain day. When Mordecai found out about this, he tore his clothes and cried out with a bitter cry. He went up to the king's gate, dressed in sackcloth. Esther sent out a man to find out why this was, and Mordecai told him. He said that Esther should go before the king and plead with him for her people. But Esther said, "No one may go in before the king unless they are called for. Anyone who does will be put to death, unless the king holds out his golden scepter." Mordecai sent this message back to her: "If you stay silent, deliverance will come for the Jews from another place, but you will perish. Who knows whether you came to the kingdom for such a time as this?" Then Esther said that Mordecai should gather all the Jews in Susa and hold a fast, not eating or drinking for 3 days. "Then I will go to the king," she said, "and if I perish, I perish." On the 3rd day, Esther put on her royal robes and went before the king on his throne. The king hadn't asked to see Esther for more than 30 days. But when he saw her, he held out the golden scepter. "What is it, Queen Esther?" he asked. "Whatever you ask will be given you, even up to half my kingdom." Esther asked that the king and Haman might come to a feast where she would tell him what she wanted. Haman and the king came to the feast, and then Esther asked them to come again tomorrow. Haman was very glad as he went out, but when he saw Mordecai he was angry. He said to his friends, "Queen Esther invited only me to feast with her and the king, and I'm invited again tomorrow. But this is worth nothing to me, so long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate." And his wife and his friends told him to build a gallows where Mordecai could be hanged, and the idea pleased Haman, and he had the gallows made. Although God isn't mentioned in the Bible story of Esther, we learn from it that God is in control of history. He arranged for Esther to be in the right place at the right time so that she could save the Jews. Haman wanted to wipe out God's people, but God would not let that happen. He rules over everything.